Hello, my name is John Havens. I'm the Executive Director of the IEEE Global Initiative for Ethical Considerations in Artificial Intelligence and Autonomous Systems. I want to say domo arigato, thank you very much for this introduction and invitation to JSAI. It is an honor to speak to all of you at your event. I also want to say a special thank you to Arisa-san for her invitation to speak at the event. Thank you very much. So, quick introduction to the work that we're doing at IEEE. We have produced a document called Ethically Aligned Design that I think really aligns with your recent principles that I'll talk about in a minute. And very excited in that sense about the principles that you released. I think they're excellent, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But our document, Ethically Aligned Design, came out in December of 2016 and featured 8 sections covering things like personal data, autonomous weapons, law, and these are all in relation to artificial intelligence and autonomous systems and ethics. And like yourself, with your principles, our primary audience was academics and engineers, but our hope is also that we can reach, like your principles, a wider audience too of policymakers and technologists in general. Basically anyone creating these technologies where if they are more familiar with how to prioritize ethical considerations in their work, even in the design phase, then there's less chance for negative, unintended consequences and more chance for positive innovation. And so one thing to be very clear, our goal is to increase and help innovation for artificial intelligence and autonomous systems creation. But we also feel that when you prioritize ethics in design, as I mentioned, you can actually increase innovation in the sense of you're not just trying to keep your products and services or systems safe, you're also looking for opportunities where you can better identify the values of the end users who are going to use your products and services. So right now we have about 250 members in the IEEE Global Initiative, and that's very exciting. A lot of our recent members actually are because of Arisa and her wonderful work in Japan, and we are honored to have so many wonderful colleagues and experts like all of you, experts in artificial intelligence and robotics, to help teach us, and teach us in the sense of we are keenly aware of how many world-leading robotics and AI and ethics experts are based in Japan. And in that regard, to be able to collaborate in any way with JSAI would be fantastic. And we certainly will be mentioning your principles in Ethically Aligned Design version 2. And I'd like to formally invite anyone watching this video, we'd love to have you join the initiative to actually join any of our committees and provide direct feedback if that's of interest. And I'll connect with Arisa if that's something any of you want to do. The other thing I should mention, and then I'll talk about the principles, is we also can make recommendations for standards working groups. And what that means is if any of our committees or people on committees have an idea for something they think should become a standard, then we can actually take that idea directly to the IEEE Standards Association and make that recommendation. Now I should say, by the way, anybody can go to the IEEE Standards Association right now, meaning in the audience watching this video. But part of what we are tasked to do with the IEEE Global Initiative, along with writing ethically aligned design, is to try to come up with standards that can help experts like yourselves prioritize ethical considerations in design and the manufacture of artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. We welcome any members of JSAI or people watching this video, if you have guests at your event, to join any of our working groups. We have about 7 so far, focused on everything from eliminating algorithmic bias to focusing on personal data issues like creating personal data impact assessments, for instance, and many other standards where we would love your participation. So now you're going to see me read for a moment, and I was mentioning your principles, and by that I meant that your actual ethical guidelines that you put out. And also, I love the fact in the description that you put out as well about the guidelines. I love the quote you have from Professor Shun Tutia, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, but Professor Shun Tutia had said that the general public is concerned about what artificial intelligence researchers would do with the technology. Therefore, it's important to make known that researchers are aiming to create a better society and that they are not mad scientists. I love that quote, and I know exactly where the professor is coming from, in the sense that one of the reasons that we created ethically aligned design was to move beyond the fear associated often with artificial intelligence. And that's a big reason, like yourself, that we've created our work, is to really, dig deep and examine issues that are difficult. Ethics, it's not like a lot of conversations are easy. You really have to discuss, what will be the ramifications of certain decisions that an algorithm or system makes, and how do you figure that out? And it's tough work. But our view is, along with talking about these things, you also have to produce guidelines or content, as you have, so that people have real pragmatic ideas about where to move forward. So in my last 2 minutes or so, the ethical guidelines, it's difficult to talk this quickly about them just because I admire them so much. And we'll be listing them in our document, pointing to them and also actually listing whole parts of it, if that's okay. And a couple of them specifically, I love how in the first guideline you talk about human rights. I think that's incredibly important, and how you say respect cultural diversity. And cultural diversity, of course, is the foundation of so many values. And again, it's hard to not talk about all these because I like them so much. But let's see. Well, I'll focus on this, number 8, where you talk about communicating with society and self-development, and how members of the JSAI must aim to improve and enhance society's understanding of AI. That is a huge part of why we were created, and a huge part of what we're trying to do, which again is to eradicate fear from people by providing these guidelines like the ones you've created to help people creating the technology. A lot of the sort of ethical work that we think we're doing is really as much about communication to the general public as it is about figuring out the technology. And lastly, I only have about a minute, but I love your number 9, the ethical guideline about abidance of ethics guidelines by AI, and that AI must abide by the policies described. I think it's a fantastic thing to list. We don't know, and I'm speaking as John, not as a representative of the IEEE here, but we don't know what may necessarily come next in terms of how humans will evolve. And I think this is amazing planning and thinking ahead. I think it also represents something, from my understanding, from a Japanese cultural viewpoint, that's really incredibly appealing for me personally, in terms of if we are creating machines or systems that someday could follow these rules, we should talk about that now, which you have. So just in closing, I want to say congratulations to the JSAI for these wonderful guidelines and for all the work you're doing Domo arigato for the chance to speak to you, and I hope we get to connect very, very soon. Thank you very much.